Welcome to Trundlebed Tales, the podcast about Laura Ingalls Wilder, historic foodways, one-room schools, and other social history. This is Sarah Utoff, the host and creator of Trundlebed Tales. Find us all around the web under Trundlebed Tales and on your favorite social media platform. If you listen or just have an account on a podcast system, please leave positive feedback wherever you get your podcasts because that helps people find the show. We no longer, sadly, have a call-in feature, but if you have a comment, a question, or a suggestion, you can email me at info@trundlebedtales.com or on any of our social media channels. And I hope you enjoy today's show. During March, there are a whole bunch of book-related holidays, but I didn't get a reading chapter done like I normally do. I've done several of them. I've read some of the Pa's Big Green Animal book. I have read some of Millbank, which really I should get back to and read some more. But lately, and especially when I was doing some experiments with different microphones, I did some Thornton W. Burgess. Now, if you haven't listened to those before, Thornton W. Burgess was a naturalist in the 19th century, and he was known for writing stories that were published in children's magazines and, regular newspapers and all sorts of places. And his stories involved a fairly standard group of people, which was people like Reddy Fox, Chatterer the Red Squirrel, um, Peter Rabbit. I don't know why all rabbits are called Peter, but apparently they are. And anyway, it's just a group of animals, and they would tell stories. Now, if you look at the pictures and somewhat in the text, they talk about the animals wearing little coats and suits and that kind of thing, which of course real animals don't. But outside of that, the behaviors of the animals are fairly true to life. Now, they don't show any of the animals eating other animals, except for, I think, chickens and the foolish green flies that Grandfather Toad eats, or Grandfather Frog eats, I'm sorry, Old Mr. Toad and Grandfather Frog. But, you take those two exceptions out, you learn a lot about how animals interact and sound in these stories. Now, the book I am reading right now is Mother West Wind's Children, which is a series of short stories. So the chapters don't cross. Normally, in a lot of the books, they always start with a recap and end with a cliffhanger, which I like. And if I read more than this book, which I might if this thing keeps going, I will probably go back to that because I think it is nice to start with the recap and end with the cliffhanger, and it makes them especially great to read in classes. So this is chapter 11, The Disappointed Bush. Way down beside the Laughing Brook grew a little bush. It looked a whole lot like other little bushes all around it, but really it was quite different, as you shall see. When it was spring, warm, jolly, round Mr. Sun brought back the birds and set them singing when the little flowers popped their heads out of the ground to have a look around. Then all the little bushes put out their green leaves. This little bush of which I am telling you put out its green leaves with the rest. The little leaves grew bigger and bigger on all the little bushes. By and by, some of the other little bushes, little brown buds began to appear and grow and grow. Then on more and more of the little bushes, the little brown buds came and grew and grew. But on this little bush of which I am telling you, no little brown buds appeared. The little bush felt very sad indeed. Pretty soon, all the little brown buds and all the other little brown bushes burst their little brown coats, and then all the little bushes were covered with little flowers. Some were white, some were yellow, and some were pink. and the air was filled with the sweet odor of all the little flowers. It brought the bees from far, far away to gather the honey, and all the little bushes were very happy indeed. But the little bush of which I am telling you had no little flowers, for you see, it had no little buds, and it felt lonely and shut away from the other little bushes, and very sad indeed. But it bravely kept on growing and growing and growing. Its little leaves grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and it tried its best not to mind because it had no little flowers. Then, one by one, and two by two, and three by three, and finally in whole showers, the little flowers of the other little bushes fell off. And they looked very much like the little bush of what I am telling you, so the little bush no longer felt sad. All summer long, all the little bushes grew and grew and grew. The birds came and built their nests among them. Peter Rabbit and his brothers and sisters scampered under them. The butterflies flew over them. By and by came the fall, and with the fall came Jack Frost. He went about the little bushes, pinching the leaves. Then the little green leaves turned to brown and red and yellow, and pretty soon they fluttered down to the ground. The merry little breezes blew them about, and all the little bushes were bare. They had no leaves at all to cover the little naked brown limbs. The little bush of which I am telling you lost its leaves with the rest. But all summer long, this little bush had been growing some little brown buds like those the other bushes had had in the spring. And now, when all the other little bushes had lost all the green leaves and had nothing at all upon their little brown twigs, behold, one beautiful day, the little bush of which I am telling you was covered in gold, for each little brown bud had burst its little brown coat, and there was a beautiful little yellow flower. Such a multitude of these little yellow flowers. They covered the little bush from top to bottom. Then the little bush felt very happy indeed, for it was the only little bush which had any flowers, and everyone who passed that way stopped to look at it and to praise it. Colder grew the weather and colder. Johnny Chuck tucked himself away to sleep all winter. Grandfather Frog went deep, deep down in the mud, not to come out again until spring. And by, the little yellow flowers dropped off the little bush, just as the other little flowers in the spring had dropped off the other little bushes. But they left behind them tiny little packages, one for every little flower that had been on the bush. In the spring, when the little leaves burst forth in all the little bushes, these little packages on the little bush of which I am telling you grew and grew and grew, while the other little bushes had a lot of little flowers as they had the year before. These little brown packages on the little bush of which I am telling you kept on growing, and they comforted the little bush because it felt that it really had something worthwhile. All the summer long, the little brown packages grew and grew until they looked like little nuts. And when the fall came again and all the little leaves dropped off all the little bushes, and the little bush of which I am telling you was covered with another lot of yellow flowers and was very happy. Then these little brown nuts, one bright autumn day, suddenly popped open, and out of each one flew two brown, shiny little seeds. You never saw such a popping and snapping and jumping. Pop, pop, snap, snap, hippity hop. They went faster than corn pops in the corn popper. Reddy Fox, who was always suspicious, thought someone was shooting at him. Down on the ground fell the little brown shining seeds and tucked themselves into the warm earth under the warm leaves, there to stay all winter long. And when the third spring came with its little birds and all its little flowers and the warm sunshine, every one of these little brown seeds, which had tucked themselves into the warm earth, burst its little brown skin, and up into the sunshine came a little green plant, which would grow and grow and grow, and by become just like the little bush I'm telling you about. When the little bush looked down and saw all these little green children popping up out of the ground, it was very happy indeed, for it knew it would no longer be lonely. It no longer felt bad when all the other little bushes were covered with flowers, for it knew that by and by When all the other little bushes had lost all their leaves and all their flowers, then would come its turn, and it knew that for a whole year its little brown children would be held safe on its branches. Now, what do you think is the name of this little bush? Why, it's witch hazel. And sometime when you fall down and bump yourself hard, Grandma will go to the medicine closet and bring out a bottle, and from the bottle she will pour something on that little sore place, and it'll make it feel better. And do you know what it is? It is the gift of the witch hazel bush to little boys and big men to make them feel better when they are hurt. Why Bobby Raccoon washes his food. Happy-go-lucky Bobby Raccoon sat on the edge of the Laughing Brook just as round, red Mr. Sun popped up from behind the Purple Hills, and Old Mother Westworm turned all her merry little breezes out to romp on the Green Meadows. Bobby Raccoon had been out all night. You see, Bobby Raccoon is very apt to get into mischief. And because usually it is safer to get into mischief under the cover of darkness, Bobby Raccoon prefers the night wherein to go abroad. Not that Bobby Raccoon is really bad. Oh my, no, everybody likes Bobby Raccoon. But he can no more keep out of mischief than a duck can keep out of the water. So Bobby Raccoon sat on the edge of the Laughing Brook, and he was very, very, very busy indeed. He was washing his breakfast. Really, it was his dinner, for turning night into day turns everything topsy-turvy. So Bobby Raccoon eats dinner when most of the little meadow folk are eating breakfast. This morning he was very busy washing a luscious ear of corn just in the milk. He dipped it in the water and with one little black paw rubbed it thoroughly. Then he looked it over carefully before, with a sigh of contentment, he sat down to put it in his empty little stomach. When he had finished it to the last sweet, juicy kernel, he ambled sleepily up the lone little path to the big hollow chestnut tree where he lives. And in its great hollow, in a soft bed of leaves, Bobby Raccoon curled himself into a tight little ball to sleep the long, bright day away. One of the Merry Little Breezes softly followed him. When he had crawled into the hollow chestnut and only his funny ringed tail hung out, the Merry Little Breezes tweaked it sharply just for fun and then danced away down the lone little path to join the other Merry Little Breezes around the Smiling Pool. "Oh, Grandfather Frog," cried a Merry Little Breeze, "tell us why Bobby Raccoon always washes his food. He never eats it where he gets it or takes it home to his hollow in the big chestnut, but always comes to the Laughing Brook to wash it. None of the other meadow people do that." Now, Great-Grandfather Frog is counted very wise. He is very, very old, and he knows the history of all the tribes of little meadow people way back to the time when the frogs ruled the world. When the Merry Little Breezes asked him why Bobby Raccoon always washes his food, Grandfather Frog stopped to snap up a particularly fat, foolish green fly that came his way. Then, while all the Merry Little Breezes gathered around him, he settled down on his big green lily pad and began. Once upon a time, when the world was young, Old King Bear ruled the Green Forest. Of course, Old Mother Nature, who is even more beautiful then than she is now, was the real ruler, but she let Old King Bear think he ruled so long as he ruled wisely. All the little Green Forest folk and all the little people of the Green Meadows used to take presents of food to Old King Bear so that he never had to hunt for things to eat. He grew fatter and fatter until it seemed as if his skin must burst, and the fatter he grew, the lazier he grew. Grandfather Frog paused with an expectant, faraway look in his great bulging eyes. When he leaped into the air so far that he came down with a great splash in the Smiling Pool. But as he swam back to his big lily pad, the leg of a foolish green fly could be sticking out of one corner of his big mouth, and he settled himself down with a sigh of great contentment. Old King Bear, continued Grandfather Frog, just as if there had been no interruption, grew fatter and lazier every day, and like great many other fat and lazy people who have nothing to do for themselves but are always waited upon by others. He grew shorter and shorter in temper and harder to please. Now, perhaps you don't know it, but the bear family and the raccoon family are very closely related. In fact, they are second cousins. Old Mr. Raccoon, Bobby Raccoon's father, with 1,000 greats tacked on before, was young then, and he was very, very proud of being related to Old King Bear. He began to pass some of his old playfellows on the Green Meadows without seeing them. He spent a great deal of time brushing his coat and combing his whiskers and caring for his big ringed tail. He held his head very high, and he put on such airs that pretty soon he could see no one at all but members of his own family and of the royal bear family. Now, as old King Bear grew fat and lazy, he grew fussy, so that he was no longer content to take everything brought to him, but picked out the choicest portions for himself and left the rest. Mr. Raccoon took charge of all the things brought as tribute to old King Bear, and of course, where there were so many goodies left, he got all he wanted without working. Just as soon as old King Bear had grown fat and lazy and selfish, Mr. Raccoon grew fat and lazy and selfish. Pretty soon he began to pick out the best things for himself and hide them before old King Bear saw them. When old King Bear was asleep, he would go get them and stuff himself like a greedy pig. And because he was stealing and wanted no one to see, he always ate his stolen feasts at night. Now, Old Mother Nature is, as you all know, very, very wise. Oh, very wise indeed. One of the first laws she made when the world was young is that every living thing shall work for what it has, and the harder it works, the stronger it shall grow. So when Old Mother Nature saw how fat and lazy and selfish old King Bear was getting, and how fat and lazy and dishonest his cousin, Mr. Raccoon, was becoming, she determined that they should be taught a lesson which they would remember forever and ever and ever. First, she proclaimed that old King Bear should be king no longer, and no more need the little folks of the Green Forest and the little people of the Green Meadows bring him tribute. Now, when Old Mother Nature made this proclamation, old King Bear was fast asleep. It was just on the edge of winter, and he had picked out a nice warm cave with a great big pile of leaves for a bed. Old Mother Nature peeped in at him. He was snoring and probably dreaming of more good things to eat. If he is to be king no longer, there is no use waking him now, said Old Mother Nature to herself. He is so fat and so stupid. He shall sleep until gentle Sister Southwind comes in the spring to kiss away the snow and ice. Then he shall waken with a lean stomach and a great appetite, and there shall be none to feed him. Now, Old Mother Nature always has a warm heart, and she was very fond of Bobby Raccoon's grandfather 1,000 times removed. So when she saw what a selfish glutton and thief he had become, she decided to put him to sleep just as she had old King Bear. But first, she would teach Mr. Raccoon that stolen food is not the sweetest. So Old Mother Nature found some tender, juicy corn just in the milk which Mr. Raccoon had stolen from old King Bear. Then she went down on the Green Meadows where the wild mustard grows, and gathering a lot of this, she rubbed the juice into the corn and then put it back where Mr. Raccoon had left it. Now, I have told you that it was night when Mr. Raccoon had his stolen feasts, for he wanted no one to see him. So no one was there when he took a great big bite of tender, juicy corn Old Mother Nature had put back for him. Being greedy and a glutton, he swallowed the first mouthful before he had fairly tasted it, and took a second, and then such a time as there was on the edge of the Green Forest. Mr. Raccoon rolled over and over with both of his forepaws clasped over his stomach, and he groaned, and groaned, and groaned, He had rubbed his eyes, and of course he had got mustard into them, and now he could not see. He waked up all the Green Forest folks who sleep through the night, as good people should, and they all gathered around to see what the matter was with Mr. Raccoon. Finally, Old Mother Nature came to his relief and brought him some water. Then she led him to his home in the great hollow in the big chestnut tree, and when she had seen him curled up in a tight little ball among the dried leaves, she put him into a long sleep as she had old King Bear. In the spring, when gentle Sister South Wind kissed away all the snow and ice, old King Bear, who was king no longer, and Mr. Raccoon awoke, and both were very thin, and both were very hungry. Oh, very, very hungry indeed. Old King Bear, who was king no longer, wasn't the least bit fussy about what he had to eat, but he ate gladly any food he could find. But Mr. Raccoon remembered the burning of his stomach and mouth and could not forget it. So whenever he found anything to eat, he first took it to the Laughing Brook or the Smiling Pond and washed it very carefully, lest there be some mustard on it. And ever since that long ago time when the world was young, the Raccoon family has remembered that experience of Mr. Raccoon, who was the second cousin to old King Bear. And that is why Bobby Raccoon washes his food, travels about at night, and sleeps all winter, concluded Grandfather Frog, fixing his great goggly eyes on a foolish green fly headed his way. Oh, thank you, Grandfather Frog, cried the Merry Little Breezes as they danced away over the Green Meadows. But one of them slipped back long enough to get behind the foolish green fly and blow him right up to Grandfather Frog's big lily pad. Chug-a-rum, said Grandfather Frog, smacking his lips. And that is enough reading for today. It looks like there's 3 stories left. So next time we read, we will probably finish this book, and then we will have to decide what to read next. If you want to know the rest of the stories, both in this book and there was another Burgess book I was reading, you can find them in the back files of this podcast, which are on your favorite podcast system. Thank you for joining us today on Trundlebed Tales. Remember to find us all around the web under Trundlebed Tales and to brighten the corner where you are.